Hi everyone, my name is Stuart Dean. I'm the EVP of Business Development here at Newbie. I'd like to welcome and thank each of you for joining our webinar today and excited to discuss the ever-growing need for building measurable ROI by combining PR with social and resulting data analytics. Before beginning, I'd like to just address a few housekeeping items. We will be recording the webinar and we'll send participants an email over the next couple of days with a link to the presentation. We will also be posting this webinar on the Newbie YouTube channel, which should be up either later today or first thing in the morning. Since we are in listening only mode, we still wish to make this as interactive as possible. Those who have questions, feel free to enter them in the GoToWebinar question box, and we will answer as many as possible, time permitting, at the end of the presentation. Those that we're not able to get to, we will do our very best to answer your individual questions offline. Let me welcome our guest, Serena Ehrlich, who I have had the privilege of working with over the last couple of years as a result of our exclusive partnership with Business Wire. I know she travels extensively throughout the country, speaking at numerous PR and marketing events, and really honored to have her here with us today. A little background on Serena. She is the Director of Social and Evolving Media for Business Wire and provides guidance for internal and external content creation and distribution services ranging from PR programming, mobile marketing to social media updates. And over the last 25 years, Serena has worked to provide guidance ranging from everything from investor relations, PR, and overall consumer behavior relation trends. Serena actually started her career in advertising, where she developed an understanding of branding from a large-scale perspective. But she really credits her 17 years in the newswire industry for placing her at the forefront of the technical, sociological, and influential revolution that is changing the face of today's customer communications. So with that, let me welcome Serena and turn the time over to you. Serena?
Stuart, thank you so much. I am so excited to be here. I love Newbie. I think you guys are such an amazing social tool. I hope everybody on this call will check Newbie out afterwards. You know, what we want to do in this webinar is we want to really talk about how PR, social, and data really drive a better PR program. The reason for this is that we actually believe that if you're in PR, you're not getting paid enough. You don't have big enough budgets. Our marketing counterparts get higher salaries and they get bigger budgets. The reason for that is they know how to utilize data. They use data throughout their entire programming, and they surface and showcase data as their response on how well the program went. So in this call, we're going to talk a little bit more about the role of data, but I also want to first really start about why PR? What is it about public relations that's so key to today's companies? On the screen, you're going to see a couple of surveys. Every other year, Nielsen does a study called the Trust in Advertising Study. And what they have found year over year is that editorial coverage, the coverage you're securing, is trusted at a rate of 66%. But when that editorial coverage is shared by a third party, the trust goes to 83%. This is a huge number of trust. This is the type of thing that moves people through sales funnels. It helps shorten the decision-making time on whether or not they're going to work with your company. And this is driven by PR. It's not driven by marketing. So what we want to do is really understand that PR has changed. It's actually become much more valuable than traditional marketing because it's really creating trusted content. And then when you combine that work with social, you can generate a much bigger impact. The other thing we have to do, really have to look at is how consumers have changed. If you're age 37, if you're 37 or younger, you were more than likely raised with a computer in your house. This means the way you make decisions and what you trust is very different, because unlike people who are over 47, who had to rely on friends to help clarify situations, you can simply Google. You've always known that you could just look online and find the answers to what you're looking for. Age 37, these people are decision makers. They're decision makers within houses, in homes, in the B2C space, and they're decision makers within companies in the B2B space. This audience is very, very reliant on research. That has changed the sales funnel from 7 interactions to make a sale to 20 interactions to make a sale. This audience relies on search to make them smarter, and they share the information they find with their friends and family. They define themselves by what they're sharing. This audience, the other really key thing to know about this audience is that they're visually fluent. Visual fluency has increased drastically in the last 5 years, where verbal intelligence has actually decreased. Now in the United States, the average SAT score for verbal is in the low 400s. Why is this? It's because most people are not verbal learners. They're not textual learners. A majority of the world are actually visual learners. And thanks to mobile phones, we can now speak in visual languages. The problem with this for PR people is that PR people tend to still think in text only. This is something that has to change in order for you to be more successful. You have to stop thinking about your press release being a text-only document, and you have to start thinking about your press release being the textual supplement to your visual education opportunities. So we have a new audience. So we know that PR is more impactful than ever, and we know that the audiences have changed. They're more reliant on their mobile phones. They're doing more research than ever before. They're more visually inclined to learn about your business through both text and visuals. And the most important thing is, again, this audience likes to share what they find. So let's talk about creating news content. When you're looking, now that we kind of have a better understanding of who our audience is, we need to look at the type of news releases that PR people are generating. One of the biggest things that PR people can do is actually take a second look at how they're crafting headlines. On the screen right now, what we're going to show you is actually a case study done by SEO PR, a company owned by Greg Jarbo. And what they did is they issued 2 identical news releases on 2 different wires. And what they did is they tracked to see which one of these news releases actually generated the most inbound traffic, the most coverage, and the most social shares. And then we want to talk about the process of how they got there. So if you look at your screen, the first release that went out was the PR Newswire version. It's on the left, and it says Rutgers offers next generation supply chain strategy program. This is a perfectly fine headline. In fact, many of you craft headlines very similar to this. We've been taught to craft headlines that are basically nouns and verbs. The problem with this headline is there's no why. The reality is Rutgers is a university. They offer classes all day long. So the fact that they're offering a supply chain class is not new. They're a university. They're supposed to offer classes. So the problem with this release is when it crossed the wire is nobody really cared because there was no why. It was literally a news release just to say a university is offering a class. So what they did is they revised the headline. How they did this is they wrote their news release first. They printed the news release out. They went through the news release and they underlined all the industry terms and phrases that are in the release. What you may be able to see on your screen is kind of small. The entire second paragraph of this news release is actually about the Internet of Things, and that the Internet of Things is changing the supply chain programming, and that this new class that Rutgers was going to offer was going to feature a big portion on learning how to add Internet of Things into the supply chain. Once they had underlined their keywords in the news release, they went to Google Trends. They went to Google Trends, they changed the location to United States, the timeline to last 7 days, By the way, you want to do 3 months if you're doing blog posts, but this works 7 days for news releases. They copied and pasted in the key terms that they had underlined, and whichever ones had the highest search in Google Trends, the highest results, they added those to the headline. So the new headline, it's much longer, but it includes Internet of Things, IoT impacts on supply chain explored by Rutgers Business School Executive Education Mini MBA program. What this new headline has done is that they have utilized search to showcase what words are most important to consumers right now. If people are searching for Internet of Things right now, media follows. That's what we call relevance when we're trying to, or context. We're trying to make your headline more relevant and more contextual to what's happening in today for today's readers. So instead of just saying Rutgers is offering a class, they added the why and the how. What is this class? Well, this class is going to also include Internet of Things and impact. Because Internet of Things, which gets 36,000 searches a week for that term, because it has such a high search volume, when they put it at the beginning of their headline, they received quite a bit of inbound traffic from their news release. In fact, they increased their news inbound traffic. They went from 9 visitors to 67 visitors. But that's not all. Not only were they able, through their news release, to actually drive people in to purchase, as you can see, 1,200% more revenue, these headlines also activated reporters. And they were able to get more coverage on this story, and they were able to, again, fill this class. So all they did here was change the headline. The news release is exactly the same. They just created a headline that used the why and the how. It wasn't just that Rutgers is offering a class, it's that Rutgers is offering a class that's going to tackle something extremely new and extremely important for the supply chain class. So once they were able to add in the why, they received much better visibility. Clients today, for business for our clients today, are doing this and seeing exceptional results. This process takes about 10 minutes. It's really easy to do, and this should absolutely be one of the new steps you take when you're crafting your news release, is making sure that the why or the impact statement of your news release is in your headline, and it utilizes the terms that people are actually talking about in relation to what you're interested in right now. So now that we have a better news release, we have visuals. By the way, as I mentioned before, you want to make sure you add visuals. You want to make sure you're writing a great headline. And then what we want to do is make sure that your headline is getting the strongest reach and your news release is getting the strongest reach possible. All of this is going to ladder into better data reports from you and better action items from you. So the first thing we want to do is we want to really talk about the role of social in PR. Why is social so important to public relations? The reality is that the average consumer today is seeing about 5,000 messages. This is what they see on TV, what they hear on radio, what they see online, and all of their own personal communications. So what we have now is we have this consumer audience base on a global level that's got more messages coming to them than ever before. So they have to really figure out and filter which messaging they want to listen to and which ones they don't. And so they rely on their friends and family. People trust the content that their friends and family share. This is one of the reasons why we want to activate social when we do PR programming, is we want to get a third party to share our content out. So it introduces our content to their trusted audiences. But the other reason we want to do this is we want to beat the algorithm. Every social channel out there is ruled by algorithms. Your view is limited, for example, on Facebook. Your status updates only are being shown to 2 to 8% of your entire fan page audience. But if you can write a status update to share your news out that triggers people to share it, those manual shares are going to beat the algorithms. So just like when you're writing a headline for your news release that you really need to think about the context of your news release, when you're writing your social updates, think about the aspiration of the channel you're putting that update on. The aspiration on Twitter is to be first, to be the most clever or the smartest. So updates with data do very, very well. Your updates on LinkedIn are about professional competition. So you want to make sure that any update you're putting into LinkedIn is really triggering into read this and you'll be better at your job. But that's not all. We know for a fact that social is very important to the visibility of news and the impact that the news release and your news coverage will do. But I want to talk about search as well. The reality is Google loves news releases and Google loves editorial coverage. This is terrific and you need to take credit for this. What's happening right now on Google is, as everybody knows, Google's an all-white landing page. People come into Google to search. They come in with intent. They're searching for specific things. And when they're looking to make a decision about a brand, an organization, or a product, people come in to search to see what people are saying about that, to see what they can find. Google knows this. So what they do when someone is searching for an organization is they will surface the organization's website. If it has locations, it'll show you the locations near you. It's going to show you the social channels, and it's going to show you the most recent news. Google knows that people come into search to make decisions on buying products and services. Google knows that people want to see editorial coverage. So Google is now going to put that at the top of search. But the problem is most PR people don't take credit for this. News releases do not have SEO, but they do have high placement in search, and you should take credit for that. When your release crosses the wire, you should utilize search terms, generic search terms, the terms that are in your headline. The first 5 to 7 words of your headline is your SEO opportunity. Don't search for the word pants if the word pants is not in your headline, but you want to go in and showcase that when people search for the common words that are found in your headline, your news release is at the top of search. Take credit for this. It's the exact same thing with your editorial coverage. When you're writing up the summary of your PR program and your successes, you should include screenshots and showcase how long the visibility of your news stayed at the top of search. Thinking about sharing, I talked a little bit earlier about the aspirations for social channels. Wharton did a terrific study on why people share, and what they found is that there are really 5 buckets. They share to entertain others, to grow relationships, self-fulfillment, to support a cause or a brand, or point number 2, to define who they are. People create different personas on every social channel. So when you're working to get your news, to increase the visibility of your news on your social channels, write the content and the update to match the aspiration of that channel. How does somebody define themselves on Pinterest is very different than how they define themselves on LinkedIn. Craft your updates to support your coverage, knowing these aspirations. They also looked at what type of content shared, and they found that smart content does very well. Happy content does very well. Negative content does very well. Sad content does not do very well. Sad content will get high engagement but few shares. If you're looking to increase shares, think about sharing out your smart content, your happy content, and your negative fixed content. So now we've talked about how to really write a news release that reporters will write on and can be found in search so your consumers can find it. We've talked about the role of social. In fact, you should be sharing your editorial coverage into your social channels on average 15 times, because social channels are algorithms. They're only going to showcase the information to small segments of your audience. The more frequently you put the news and information into search and social, the more likely it is to have impact. Now that you've done this, let's talk a little bit about how to measure your success so you get more credit for all the work you're actually doing. It's time to move past editorial coverage only and to start taking credit for all the things that you're impacting with your news. So when we talk about measurement, again, frequently we'll hear, well, the measurement, this program worked or it didn't work based on editorial coverage. But the reality is, as we all know, our C-suite cares about something other than editorial coverage. They care about revenues. They care about employees. They care about recruiting, about market share. Your editorial coverage ladders directly into these areas, but so does all the other activities that you're doing but not taking credit for. So let's talk about it. The very first thing, of course, when you're measuring the success of your PR program is obviously looking at your earned coverage. This is, of course, your editorial coverage. Here, what you want to look at is you obviously want to count and see the number of places that you received coverage. You'll want to drop the link into a service like TweetReach to see how far each piece of coverage went. By the way, Newbie, the Business Wire Newbie reports will show you this as well, and I'm going to show you that at the end of this discussion. You also want to look at the length of the article that was written about you. What's very interesting, and it's a really big bonus for PR people today, is reporters are busier than ever. They simply do not have the time to do deep research on their articles. So more and more often, we're actually seeing them copy and paste segments of the news release and place them into the article. This is terrific. This means you have message point usage. You should count that. Count how many message points that were in your original news release made it into the editorial coverage and take credit for that. It used to be that if you got one of your message points across, that was a huge success. Now we're seeing 4 or 5 different message points being included in the coverage pieces. That's amazing. The other thing you want to look at and take credit for is if your visual assets are being used. If you sent your news release out and it did not include an image, you should be aware that a majority of reporters will not cover your story. Reporters do not have time to sit down and go look for visuals to match your story. So they do what I call reporter revenge. They'll actually write an entire story about you, but they'll include your competitors' assets. If you're not sending out releases with assets, you need to start doing that now. Not only will you find that you're getting more coverage, we get about 3 times the activity when something includes an image, but you'll actually start to see your visual story, your asset, being included with your textual story. If you have assets that you do send out on a regular basis, one of the things I recommend is each month sitting down and doing a reverse asset search. Go into Google and do a reverse image search and put your news images in there. You may find out that your news images are accompanying competitive articles. That's one way to find out and take credit for this work. So you really, with earned, you want to go past just the number of pieces of coverage or the places and who wrote about it and you really want to look at your message points being included and whether or not your asset was used, whether it was in your article or in a competitive article. You also want to, with paid, you want to look at what your news release content is generating for you. You want to look at how far your release went. What was the open rates? How many people accessed your multimedia? Of course, news coverage. We want to talk about news shares, which I'll talk about next. What about inbound traffic? If you're not taking credit for that, what are you missing? Again, message adoption, and don't forget georesonance. I'll talk more about each of those next. For social, again, you want to look at your overall discussions. Not only how many discussions you had, but who was talking about you. How many of these influencers are employees? How many of them are brand fans? How many of them are industry experts? How many of your articles that you secured were shared on social? Which articles went the furthest? Did your news release generate new followers on your social accounts? Again, inbound traffic. What actions were your social users taking on your behalf? All of these things are data points that you should be taking credit for when you submit or when you do your wrap-up of your PR programming. And then your owned channels. One of the biggest mistakes that PR people take is that they do not take credit for brand new inbound traffic on the day of their news release, new subscriptions to newsletters or email mailing lists, new followers on your social channels and webinars. We know for a fact, one of the things that we do here is we created a baseline. every day we know on average how many new subscriptions we get. So the day that a news release crosses the wire and we start our PR program, anything above that baseline, if we're getting 100 new followers a day, and the day of our news release we get 200 new followers, the excess above that, that extra 100 followers, the PR team gets credit for that. It was their work, it's their PR program that's driving in these extra registrations. You've got to be taking credit for this kind of work. And then my all-time favorite thing is literally taking credit for your inbound traffic to your website. I would say probably 5% of the PR people that we work with are doing this. This is a massive opportunity for you as a PR pro to take credit for your work on your company's business goals. You work with your digital team, you ask them for a URL builder, which as you can see on the middle of your screen, is a piece of code you extend to the end of your website address. Then every time you include your website address in your news release or in your social channels or in your blog, and somebody clicks on that link, it will tell you the actions they took within your website. Now, keep in mind, this is only going to be a snapshot. People are bananas. When they are on your news release or on your editorial coverage or even on your own website and they're looking at something, if they want to go to another page, even though the link is right there, they will frequently just retype your name up in the search browser and come in that way. So this is only a snapshot of your total activity, but what an amazing snapshot this is. When you add this type of code in, what you're going to be able to do is some A/B testing. The first thing you're going to be able to do is see, did people actually come into the website? Was there any interest? Then, when they come in, how long were they on that landing page? You might be driving in a significant number of people, but if they're bouncing off your landing page in 1 or 2 seconds, then you're never achieving, then PR is not connecting to business goals. But you don't know that if you don't utilize this type of UTM link. So by adding in a UTM link, you're going to be able to see, did people, when they came into the website, did they stay? And let's say they don't stay. Let's say they bounce off in a second or two. Then your next release that you send out, you want to send them to a different website. You know, perhaps it's a subpage of your website. Then that second time they come in and you've given them a new landing page and you find out that they've now been in your site for 3 minutes. That's a huge difference. And that's something that you discovered and you changed. You want to know where they came in from, what devices they use. You might find out that 90% of your news release traffic is coming in from desktops, not mobile landing pages. Or you might find the other way around. You're going to be able to find out if the people you're driving into the site, if it's their very first time ever going to your website. That is huge. To take a news release or a new piece of news coverage and drive brand new people into your website, that is enormous. You're introducing new people into your marketing and sales funnels. Or you might find out it's their 10th time. Or you might find out that they came to the site and actually completed a purchase. But unless you're using these codes, you're not getting credit for any of this work. You're also not able to make changes to your work that might drive higher results for your next release. So we highly recommend that you utilize this kind of data and consider this to be A/B testing. For your next news release, why don't you try rewriting your headline using Google Trends and then utilizing these types of URL builders. And then what you can do is you'll have more traffic, you'll have more data, you'll have more information that will tell you if you're going down the right path with your PR program or if you need to make small changes with big impact. These are free and easy to use. If you're not familiar with where to get your URL builder, just ask whoever manages your Google Analytics or your Omniture Analytics. Every analytics program has this. Ask whoever has this to send you a link that you can use, and then also to set you up with automated reporting. So on a weekly basis, you can see the traffic you're generating and the changes you're making and the impact you're doing. PR people are not taking credit for this. Marketing people are. If you want a higher salary, if you want your PR program to be seen as tied more strongly to your business goals, this is one way to do it. And then let's talk about how you can actually utilize the data you get the day of your news release, the day your releases cross the wire, and the week your releases crosses the wire, because this data has activities for you to do. So Business Wire, the Newbie news track reports, they come to you by email. If you don't get the email, you can just go to businesswire.com, log in, and click View Reports. The very first report you're going to see from us, the minute your release crosses the wire, we start collecting data. Most news release visibility spikes in the first few hours, and then will spike again as coverage begins to be generated and your news releases start to be shared out on social. One of the smart things you can do here is match your news release distribution time to when your audiences are most likely to be online and consuming news. If you're a West Coast company and you want to issue your news at 6 a.m., you may find that your social generation doesn't start until later in the day. So you want to make sure, maybe even consider issuing releases later in order to engage directly with your audiences, or come back in as your audiences start coming online and you can see the new traffic spikes that your release is generating. Business Wire news release data also includes a snapshot of the views of your news release. This is only a snapshot, but it shows the various ways and places people discovered and read your news. The more widely your news release is shared, the more places people have to discover it. We've heard many times the news release is dead, but that's absolutely ridiculous. The only good PR program is one that people see. News releases drive that type of visibility and discoverability. If I have the intent of learning more about your business, but you've only placed your news release into your online newsroom, I'll never see it, which means I will more than likely see your competitors' work. The other thing that you want to do with these reports is you can look, especially on this one on your screen, is you're going to be able to see if you received any views directly from Business Wire's website. Or my favorite thing to do is click the button, the orange piece of pie, the referral traffic, and then you can go in and actually see who is referring traffic to you. This is very interesting. If you look on the screen on the left, you're going to see Y Combinator, Reddit, Gizmodo. What's happened in this particular news release is that the reporter at Gizmodo has linked to the Business Wire version of your news release. And because they've linked to the Business Wire version, we can track all the inbound traffic that's come in from that link. So in this particular case, the Gizmodo article about this client generated an additional 6,000 people to come back and view the source news, the original news release. So from this screen, you're going to be able to see what websites are driving the most visibility and views to your story, as well as the impact of social shares, placing your news release in Reddit, or on Y Combinator, or on Facebook, or again, if media outlets link to your story in their editorial coverage. Let's keep going. This is my all-time favorite screen. This actually is an amazing action item for you. When you send your release to Business Wire, you get to choose your free trade categories. So if you're a tech company, we'll send your release out to all the tech reporters in the United States. We will also look at your news release, and based on our knowledge, we may add in additional categories relevant to your story. We've been working with reporters since the 60s, so we kind of know who may, if you think your story is technology oriented, we may see vertical markets of interest. Then what you can do is go into this section of your screen, and this is a view of all the reporters who showed interest in your story. So you see you have your technology reporters, 350 people have accessed it. But wow, 270 reporters in the health space have also shown interest. Well, if you haven't been pitching health reporters, but you see that you have high resonance in the health space, this is a perfect time to pull up a media database, do a little bit of research in the health space, perhaps the health tech space, and pitch reporters. This should be done the same day your release crosses the wire. What you're going to do here from this screen is you're going to get to see the vertical markets that are showing interest in your news. And then from there, you can pitch those people. You can also showcase this information internally, especially if your company is considering moving into different lines. Perhaps you're a tech company that has been considering internally launching a health division. This type of information is going to showcase to your management that you're watching these other spaces to test to see about resonance, and you can show them the type of resonance that you're receiving. Once you've seen the volume of discussions, we're going to provide you, this is actually a list of all the links in your news release. So what this is going to do, we get a ton of news releases that have hyperlinks to everything in it. That's fine. You can link to all the things you'd like to do, but the more links you add, the fewer clicks you're going to get on the links that matter the most. So instead of linking to everything, consider smart linking. Use your reports to see which of your links are resonating the most with your readers, and the ones that resonate the most, include them in your next release, and the ones that don't, remove them. For example, some of our clients, I'll use Analog Devices as an example. They do a terrific job of news release crafting and link usage. What they do is they've identified internally that every time they send out news releases, they're able to get higher subscriptions of their internal marketing channels that help move people through the marketing funnel faster. So they only include links to those channels in their news release. They do not include a link to their LinkedIn channel or their YouTube channel. What they've done is they're taking their news release, and through hyperlinks, they're helping drive to their company's business goals. And again, they get credit for all the new subscriptions to those links outside of your standard baseline. So what you have here now is now you can really assess which links are helping you meet your business goals, which ones are not, and you can restructure your release to really take away the ones that aren't educating the reader or helping them join into your marketing channels faster. 7 days after your release crosses the wire, we are so excited to be working with Newbie. And what this is going to do is you're going to get a report from Newbie that will actually give you the social engagement of your news release. It's going to tell you how many times your news release is shared out on social. It's going to tell you who is sharing it. It's going to give you geolocation. You're going to get a lot of data here. And a lot of this data is actionable. So let me walk you through these reports and show you the actions you can take. Remember, the more actions you can take, the stronger you are, the more data and awesome work you're going to get credit for, but also ultimately, the stronger your news release to business goals relationship will be. So the very first thing is you're going to see is obviously the discussion volume. You're going to provide us keywords. We will expand on those keywords if we feel or see that those keywords have been expanded online. This report's going to tell you the total mentions as well as the conversation timeline, social platform source, reach and spread of your messaging. Did your release travel as far as you wanted it to go? Did you get as many shares as you needed? If not, you may need to create a social amplification program to help you increase your shares. Shares are extremely important because shares beat algorithms. If you're not placing your editorial coverage into social, because for some reason you feel like it might offend your followers, I highly recommend that you change that mentality. You need to be placing this highly trusted content into your social channels as frequently as you can in order to generate these shares. You want to craft social updates that include that trigger shares. You want to include hashtags for discussion relevance, and you want to work with the influencers that these reports will showcase and surface for you in order to build a stronger share relationship. So in this report, it's actually what's what you see on the screen is a list of every person who tweeted out the news and what they shared. So the reason I actually chose this screen to show you is something interesting for Business Wire. When we first were looking at our Newbie reports and our news releases, one of the things that we noticed was that our employees were actively sharing out our content. In fact, on the screen, I see 4 or 5 Business Wire employees sharing out this content. That was natural shares. What it made me realize was that we had employees who were very interested in sharing out and advocating our news. So what we did from this data is we actually created an employee advocacy program. So now, every time we issue a news release or we secure editorial coverage or we have an op-ed or we have an important event, we will craft messaging, tweets, Twitter, short form for Twitter, longer form for LinkedIn and for Facebook, and we place it in our intranet. No company can force anyone to share on social, but by putting that content into our intranet with an encouraging note saying, please share this out on social, what we found was that we were able to get more advocacy, more humans sharing out our news. In addition to that, we started getting feedback from our own employees, thanking us for making this information available, thanking us for giving them smart content to put into their social channels. So that's just one action item you can take from this reporting. How many of your employees are sharing it out? Is it significant enough that an employee advocacy program could be very useful? Or is it so low that an employee advocacy program may be needed to even jumpstart those shares? This list is also going to tell you which reporters are sharing out your news, which industry experts are sharing out your news, and your brand fans. From that, you can create Twitter lists. You don't have to follow someone on Twitter. You can simply create a list, for example, of the smartest reporters in technology, and then you can add these people to that list. Then once a day, scroll through that list, retweet things out, learn what these people care about. These are the people who are sharing out your information. Learn more about them. They're already advocating on your behalf. The other thing that we're going to get from this reporting is you're going to find out if your messaging is resonating or not. So for example, if I click on the word business, I'm going to get to see all the updates on social that were related to business. And I may find out that not one of them says Business Wire. That perhaps on social, the name Business Wire changes to BizWire. By the way, that's not true, but I can find that out with this message permeation grid. What this does is it really tells you which were the most popular words utilized in your social updates. And this is going to tell you if your messaging was some of those words. If business was here, but wire was not, I didn't get message permeation. Actually, I'll tell you a story. With Business Wire, we're a news release distribution company. But every time for years, when our information would get into social, it would change to press release. We have been working hard to get people to use the phrase news release, and I can now take credit for those terms being used. The other report you're going to get from us is a list of all the hashtags mentioned in the updates related to you. So you may have already known that your hashtag was hashtag funding, but you may have never known that people were adding the hashtag gaming to your updates as well. You can click on that hashtag and learn more about those conversations that third parties are inserting your information into. Again, you also can see all the keywords. You have your word bullet, your burst here. You also have a list here. How many times was your keyword used? For us, the fact that the word news release is being used, finally, that's a point for us. We're taking credit for that. That's work we've been doing for years to get people to change how they refer to us. We're starting to see it, and I now have the proof. The last thing here that I absolutely love, and I mentioned this earlier, is the trending URLs. These are all the URLs that have been used by people sharing out your information. This is going to show you which piece of editorial coverage you secured traveled the most on social. So if your business goal is sales and you have an elongated decision cycle, let's say it takes 20 touches to make your sale, and when people send this out, the URL, your boss has told you that all they want is a piece in the Wall Street Journal, and you know for a fact that to make sale for your product, you need to be in PR daily. You can utilize this information to showcase to management how you're how you're tiering or organizing your pitch lists. It doesn't mean that the Wall Street Journal isn't relevant, but if the PR Daily piece is shared 100 times and the Wall Street Journal piece is shared 17 times, which one really laddered to your business goal? So what this is going to do is it's going to tell you in order of shares what URLs were added to your releases. And you can see GIF files in here as well. Sometimes people add GIF files, but you're going to start to see which URLs are being shared out. The other thing you can do here is you might be able to identify editorial coverage that you didn't know you had, or third-party articles that people are tagging to you. So you want to make sure you go through this list and take credit for any of the coverage pieces that may appear here that you might not have seen, or that you can showcase how visible on social your editorial coverage pieces are. If you secured a wonderful piece in your top target publication, but it's only been shared out 12 times, you need to consider putting that article back into social. You need to consider getting more shares, asking employees to send it out. The social share is extraordinarily important for the visibility and impact. So this is going to tell you how socially shared it was out.
Serena, can I make just a quick comment?
Sure.
Sorry to interrupt you. And one thing that just really strikes me is this whole trending analysis is so important right now. And you know, we've all heard the point that social in many ways has become the world's greatest focus group, right? People tell you what they think. It may mirror what PR professionals are doing with their own social engagement, but maybe things have gone sideways where it requires more of a proactive approach. And reports and this type of trending analysis can be a big advantage.
100%, absolutely. And that's the amazing thing, is that you can get that you have this data. This data exists with all the news releases that have crossed the wire on Business Wire for the last few years. So if you haven't been utilizing this data up to now, you can still access your reports and create, and you can see on a bigger perspective from 1 year to today, how much, what the changes are. Did your keyword trending change? Did your URL shares change? Are your hashtags changing? And then, my favorite thing, Stuart, in the whole wide world is this slide. This is one of my favorite things. So let's say you sent out your news release to Dallas. You're just sending your release out to Dallas. Well, let me tell you something. In the news track report you're going to get from Business Wire the day your release crosses the wire, and the social report you're getting from Newbie, both reports are going to show you where your release views and activity came from by geographic market. So let's say you're a publicly held company in the United States, but you're headquartered in Dallas. You do your release to Dallas only, and you look at the screen and you say, wow, California, Virginia, Massachusetts, huge resonance there. Well, the very first thing I would do is at Business Wire, I will call my salespeople in those markets, and I'll have them make sales calls today because the news is resonating in those markets. The second thing I'm going to do, absolutely, I'm going to pull up a pitch list. I'm going to go into California, I'm going to go into Virginia, and I'm going to go into Massachusetts, and I'm going to pull out AM radio, and I'm going to pull out the business journals in those markets, and I'm going to pitch those people, because reporters in those markets, people in those markets care about my news. Now, am I going to do this for Missouri? Probably not. Missouri only had 179 views. But California with 4,000 views, Virginia with 7,000 views, I'll absolutely do that. So right here from the data reports that we're giving you, you can now pitch particular markets geographically, but you can also give this an action item to your sales teams. You can also give this action item to your social teams. Hey, listen, we have a lot of resonance of our news in California. Let's do a local Facebook update or a local Facebook ad just to California and try to extend that reach. So right off the bat, not only are we telling you what new industry markets you should be pitching today to extend the impact of today's news, we're also going to tell you geographically. But it's not just the United States. We're also going to tell you on a global level. So if your company has a France office and this news is highly relevant to your France office, share it with them. Let them know that right now, thanks to these data reports, we're seeing a lot of release views in that particular international market. Let that international market consider to doing some local market pitches or having the international market share that news with their clients and prospects. You're already seeing resonance in those markets. You really should now take advantage of that. It takes 22 touches to make a sale, and it's easier to push a ball that's already rolling. So take advantage of these and create extra steps for yourself and extend your launch. Here's the Newbie version. What this version does is it tells you from a social perspective, your social volume. So you may find out that your news release again went out in Dallas. You see some volume there in Texas, but wow, people in New York were the ones who are really sharing this out. So then you might want to consider again, social ads just for the New York market. Having your sales team call the New York market. You yourself pitching new media outlets in this market. What you're going to begin to see here is where does your news resonate? The other flip side of this is that you may have thought all your shares were going to be in Texas and you didn't get any in Texas. That's going to show you that you're not resonating locally. You may need to change the headline of your news release to focus on the fact that you're in Dallas. Or you may want to increase the number of social shares by creating advocacy programs. These maps, this data will actually give you, it'll tell you where you may have made a misstep, but it's going to tell you where you can act. So again, think about the RSS feeds. What geographic markets were of interest? Think about who's sharing it on social. Look at the trending data, and then look on a geographic level and create action items as you go. Then your PR program isn't, we sent out a news release, we pitched the media, and we're done. Your PR program now can be extended, but solely based on data. You're not just pitching random markets. You're not just pitching random publications. You now have the data to show you which ones are going to be of interest to you, increasing the success or likelihood of success of your pitches and your activities. And then the last thing, the other great thing you get is you can actually go in on your Business Wire reporting and just click compare to recent. You can literally click and see, did this release do better than that release? I changed the headline here. Did that change the open rates and the impact? You may find that your view count stays the same, but your shares, your link clicks, or your multimedia views drastically changed. So what you're going to be able to do is see your impact from a comparison basis. So when you're starting out thinking about how can I refresh my PR program today in order to generate more ROI, so basically we can all get raises and we can all get bigger budgets, you need to write a new headline. You need to use data to build your headline. You've got to think about who your audience is, and you have to include multimedia assets. Nobody is text only anymore. Everybody's visual, so you've got to think in a visual asset as well. And then you want to use the data that's being provided to you in order to make a better decision. And then the last thing, and then Stuart, I'm ready for any questions, is this is just my favorite list of my cheat sheet tools. I will literally utilize Google Trends to create a headline, but then I'll drop it into the headline testers just to make sure that it resonates. When I'm selecting my multimedia asset to go out with my news release, I want to make sure I'm picking an asset that reporters are going to love and that will connect with consumers. So MIT has a photo tracking tool, well, a photo testing tool. You upload the photo and it will tell you right off the bat if it's something you should include or not. Is it going to be of interest or if it's not? You can see how far your URLs traveled. I call tweet reach and I call the Newbie trending URLs, I call that corporate volume. If you've ever had a bad article written about you and you don't know how to see what the impact of that article is, drop it in tweet reach. It will tell you how visible that article is. You can do the same thing with positive articles. And then, if you want to learn more about how to do this, come to us at Business Wire or Stuart and his team at Newbie. This is what we do all day long, is look to see how we can best create content and data that will work for you. So if you have questions, let us know.
Serena, great stuff. Let me just make one additional comment, and I'm glad you talked a little bit about georesonance. One thing that, from a social perspective, and those who've seen the Newbie reports, that's a really important added value is the ability to also look at sentiment. So with your campaigns, with your press releases, from a social perspective, the ability to look at whether that announcement is being viewed favorably, or is it more objective, or is it maybe even negative, which allows you the ability to be proactive if needed from that. So, but we are getting a few questions in the interest of time, Serena, and I think this is a really good one. I wanted to ask you, or the question came in: trending is good. However, how do you measure success from trending? What's your thoughts on that, Serena?
Oh, so that's interesting. So here, I'm just going to pull up the trending screen. And Stuart, if you have ideas, jump in as well. So one of the things you can do is you can just determine ahead of time that you want anything related to this type of news to have a specific hashtag. And then you can look here to make sure that that hashtag is included. If not, you want to look and see what other hashtags were included. And then you want to kind of look at the rationale of why. So right off the bat, if I don't think cannabis was my top hashtag, but if it was, and I promise I'm looking at the screen if my mom's on this call, you can look here and say, wow, okay, 13 people who shared it out used that hashtag, but we had 133 shares. So for my next release, I want to make sure, the next time I do this, I want to make sure that I get more tags. You can also look to see what hashtags are growing and how people add it in. Trending keywords, it's the same thing. You want to look and identify what terms you want to be associated with and then add that in. But you may need to modify your terms. I did a headline tester for a client the other day, and their client uses the word children. But in trending keywords, when the word children goes online, it's changed to the word kids. So what they were able to do is say their preference was the word children, but they were never going to be able to own that word. The trending keyword was continuously the word kids. So what they did is they actually modified their language. What they realized is that they were trying to force their terminology onto their readers. So by changing it from children to kids, they were actually able to build a closer relationship with their audience, because now they're not so formal. Now they're not just utilizing the formal term, they're speaking in the words of their end audience. And then again, with trending URLs, how I use that is I truly look and see which of our pieces of editorial coverage, whether it was the news release itself or a coverage piece, which ones had the most visibility, and how can I modify that? So if a really important piece of editorial coverage is secured, but I don't get the shares behind it, and I don't see the shares here, I might create an entirely new share program just for that coverage, even a week later. Coverage is, people do searches to make decisions on brands 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So I no longer am limited to just the day my release went out or the week my release went out. I might put some paid behind it in order to increase those shares. So that's kind of some of how I utilize these reports. But Stuart, has your team seen other options?
I think you did a really good job kind of targeting that. The one thing I will say on the trending side is that, it's interesting when we talk to many of our customers, a lot of times when they look at the reports or the real-time data that our software provides, sometimes they're surprised with some of the information, whether it's a trending hashtag or keywords. And when it's related to the press release, a lot of times they'll implement that in future announcements or press releases and try to build traction that way. So you're right. You have to be fairly flexible, the ability to kind of pivot if needed, and And when that resonates through your own PR efforts as well as social, run with that until you find something else that continues to work. So I think it's a really good point. Just kind of moving along, Serena, this is really helpful. The question came in, can you go into a little more details on the UTM tags and really how to develop them? Do you have any additional thoughts on that?
I love URL builders. Okay, so there's something, so I'm putting it back up on the screen. So these are URL builders. They're also literally called UTM links. They're exactly the same thing. So right off the bat, you may have to ask someone for both. But this is literally, so you can see on the screen, it says businesswire.com. So in my news release, I know I want to include a link to businesswire.com. What it is what you're actually going to get. So when I ask my team, so at BusinessWire, I don't manage our Google Analytics. I can create one of these, but it's easier if I just work through the team that actually does it. So I'll email my team and I'll say, I'm issuing a news release on this topic, and I'd like to have a URL builder so we can track the inbound traffic that we receive from this link. Then my team will actually send me, and where it starts is, it starts with that, if you look at the screen, with the question mark. So it literally, they'll give me from the question mark onward. And I just type businesswire.com and I paste that on. So it's really easy to do. So now what I have is this really massively long hyperlink. I just copy that whole thing and I paste it behind businesswire.com. I attach this question mark long string of code to every businesswire.com URL or even a subpage. If it's businesswire.com/products, I'll put it there as well, whatever I'm driving into our website. Then, as I said, what I'll be able to do is get a report from the same person. So I'll also say, can you send me a report so I know what the activities are when somebody clicks this link? And it's just automated. They don't have to manually do this each time. It's literally easy because it's automated. And this will take your team less than 5 minutes to build. These are really easy to put together. It's not like you're going to be assigning someone a huge task. The thing you'll want to make a decision on is if you want to use a different builder every single time, which you may want to do that if you're comparing like old traffic and new, like this is our old traditional old news release with no photo. Here's our new releases with photos. You may want to track by release. Some clients will actually use one builder for an entire year, and they'll use one builder for news releases. They'll use one code for social and one code for blogs. That way they can track all the traffic their news release generates in a year and see from a full year perspective how that's doing. Other companies will create builders based on internal lines. So the PR team for PR releases will have one code, earnings releases will have another code. You can determine how you want to do this. But once you've attached this code to your release and you've just sent it over to BusinessWire, we send it out. Every time someone clicks on that link, it's going to automatically, literally line up with your existing analytics program. So once you've used that code, you don't have to do any work internally. Now I can literally track all the inbound traffic from people who clicked this link, and I can see exactly what they do. I get one snapshot just for these people. However, as I said earlier, make sure you tell people this is only a snapshot, because I cannot tell you how many times a client will come to me and say, we only drove in 8 people to the website. But then we'll look at their Google Analytics and realize that actually they drove in 1,000 people over their standard baseline. It's just that people are bananas and they like to type in businesswire.com again at the top of the page versus just clicking a link. But what this will do is give you so much data. And I actually have an article on how to add these in that Stuart, we can send out when we send out, we can include that in here as well. But BusinessWire has written an article on how to add these in. Super easy to do. And if you have any questions, I can walk you through this. Legitimately takes less than 10 minutes to do. And then again, it's going to now give you credit for everything somebody's doing on your website. So if somebody's already been to your website before, they're already being tracked in Google Analytics. You don't have to do anything. I don't have to do anything. That's just how Google Analytics works. So when you add this code, now what it's going to do is take this piece of data and it's going to pull in those other pieces of data as needed. So if you have this code on your release and I click on it and I've never been to your site before, it's going to surface that. You're literally in your report, it will say, these people, it was the first time to your site. These people, they've already been to your site. These people we've identified as employees, and they, it will literally give you all of that data. And then from that data, the biggest thing you want to look at is how long they stay on your landing page. Because if they bounce off your page in 1 second or 2 seconds, that means your entire career of doing PR for your company, sending them to that page that you were sending them to, never converted. All the work you've been doing, never converted. So if you're the person who catches that, and you're the person who says, hey, instead of sending them to businesswire.com, let's send them to services.businesswire.com. If you're that person, and on the new landing page, they stay on your site for 3 minutes, that's a massive increase to business goals that you caught, corrected, and now are generating. I love Google Analytics and this Google URL Builder. If you guys have additional questions about it, please just let either of us know, and we can get you that link or walk you through this.
One final question, and really appreciate everyone's time. I just wanted to make an observation. At first look, and Serena, you kind of talked about this early on, a lot of people think that the press release and social engagement could really be redundant, but yet Business Wire has really done a good job of embracing social as an important supplemental audience when you talked about everything from influencers and sentiment, how you really need to build them within your program. Let me just ask you real quickly, if you were to look into the crystal ball, Serena, what are some of the changes that you kind of, if you look ahead, you would anticipate? Just if you have any thoughts on that. Yeah.
I will tell you, I think it's the biggest thing that's going to happen to PR is going to be the insistence of multimedia. We get so many complaints from reporters about news releases without multimedia assets. In fact, the biggest complaint we get from radio reporters is no multimedia. Everybody has to have multimedia, and the problem is PR people still think text only. They think the news release is enough. That has to change. And it's funny because we've been saying this since the 90s, but it's the first time last year where AP basically said we have 4,000 subscribers who subscribe to get Business Wire's news through AP. Not one of them will open a story without a photo. It's reporter revenge. They're starting to include competitive images in articles to punish people for not giving them their assets. PR, it's not reporters don't want to be punitive. They're not out to get anybody. They just no longer have a photo desk. They have to do the work themselves, and they don't have the time to do it. So I would say multimedia, the change from the text leading the way, if 63% of the world are visual learners, then we have to start thinking in that concept. The second thing that has to happen is we have to start creating social media updates by channel aspiration. When people used to tell me, oh, you have to have a different update on each channel, I legitimately just thought I had to rewrite the update. It just had to be worded differently. That's not true. It actually, you have to really think about, why is somebody using this channel? What is their personal goal for being on this channel? And how can I craft an update that matches that goal so well that they share it? So I think there's a lot of customization. I think people don't take advantage of things like Facebook's free audience targeting. I think tools like that are going to become much more valuable. And then I really think services like yours, like Newbie, where you can, from one-stop shop, you can create your updates, and then you can analyze your updates as they cross the wire. You can see, or the social channel, and you can see the reactions. I think that we're moving into a much more real-time opportunity. I think this is a really good place. And then the very, very last thing is PR people have to think like marketers. You can sit and listen to marketers talk about failed programs. They never talk about failed programs. They always talk about the they always talk about the data that they gleaned from it. Here's what we're going to do better next time. And I think PR pros currently have not budgeted themselves to have that kind of time, but I think that's the last step, is really taking the data that you're getting and setting time aside to take that data, create action items, and act on it faster.
Well, thanks, Serena, and really, really great insights. If you wouldn't mind, if you want to go to the last slide where it just has our contact information, we were not able to get to all of the questions, some great feedback. And again, we'll do our very best to actually reach out and to all of you individually on those questions. Any last comments, Serena?
No, I think this is great. Please check out newbie.com. It's our favorite social tool. And if you have questions, businesswire.com or services.businesswire.com. If you want to stay for 3 minutes and 14 seconds, go to services.businesswire.com.
Perfect. And again, as I mentioned at the very beginning, we'll have the archived presentation that'll be available on Newbie's YouTube channel. And an email will go out in the next day or so as well. Again, thanks to everyone who's joined. I thought this was really time well spent, and wish you all a great day. Thank you.